Well, it looks like Texas Democrats are going to be coming home. Report the fugitives have conceded will return to Austin. The Texas House Democrats who ran away while claiming that was their version of sticking around and fighting in protest of the Republican-led redistricting effort will return home after Governor Abbott took emergency action to begin removing the legislators from office as they have refused to show up for work. And it's not just, of course, a matter of refusing to show up from work or show up for work. It is the fact that they are completely halting the ability of the elected officials to do their job. Some people might see that as a threat to democracy. These are people in the democratic process elected to represent the people of Texas that happen to be in their specific district so that they can go about and carry on the role of a state legislature, of which, by the way, in Texas, they only meet every other year, unless there's special session called, which is quite often because of the fact that they only meet every other year. But the move by Democrats, and I think this should be noted. We hear so much about January 6th, January 6th, January 6th, the insurrection, and it was all painted as being so dangerous, worse than the Holocaust, some Democrats said, because it was trying to prevent lawmakers from carrying out their constitutional duties. That they were attempting to prevent the Senate from carrying out its role in certifying and counting the electoral votes for the presidency. And this was what was so horrendous about what those insurrectionists were doing on January 6th, trying to prevent government from fulfilling its duty. Well, what were the elected Democrats in Texas doing? Same thing. Except they took the opposite route. Instead of going into the Capitol, they ran out of it and left the state's jurisdiction so that there wasn't a quorum, preventing government from proceeding. Sort of a weird inverse insurrection of sorts. Well, multiple sources have revealed the news to ABC 13 yesterday, though the exact date the Democrats are planning to fully return to the Senate Capitol in Austin was not confirmed. The State House had only 95 members present for the second day in a row yesterday, with Speaker Dustin Burrows predicting that the session would end and a new one would start, assuming that there's no quorum on Friday. Senate Democrats did not break quorum. Well, all this focus has been on the Assembly side. And they did, however, stomp their feet and storm out of the Senate chamber in protest as Republicans passed the new redistricting map on the Senate side. So that has been done, and I don't know if the timing of this is, because the announcement the Democrats were coming back, so there would be a quorum in the Assembly, and so the Senate decided, all right, well, let's go ahead and do this, take care of it, so it'll be ready once they are able on the Assembly side to get things rolling once again, or if it was just, timing unconnected. But nonetheless, Democrats got very angry. Oh, we're going to show how we fight. We're going to leave. And that is what has occurred in Texas over the past 24 hours. I don't know what the end plan was for Democrats, but I do believe this is become the undisciplined, ignorant, short-sighted approach that Democrats increasingly take. And they don't think it through. They don't play the tape forward. They don't say, okay, if we do this, what is the response going to be? And then what is our response? What is our end goal? First off, what is our end goal? And this is the end goal. Okay, so the move that we're going to make now, we're going to run away from the fight. We're going to go to another state. pick the one that's got the, billionaire governor that can make sure that we've got nice accommodations. But then what? Did you think that Republicans, particularly with Trump, influencing Republicans in Texas specifically to take advantage of their ability to redistrict and to start playing the game the way the Democrats do, did they think that Texas Republicans were going to say, okay, well, we'll give up now? Maybe they did. The Republican Party in Texas is not one that is solidly conservative. In fact, there are some conservative Republicans in Texas that say essentially it is the Democrats that run the agenda there because there are enough rhinos, if you want to call them that, in the party that when it comes to picking a speaker, they end up coordinating with the Democrats in order to get enough votes to get the speaker they want and so forth. And there's been a huge rift between Republicans and then those who run as Republicans but arguably are not in Texas. So on the outside of Texas, we see it as it's Texas. It's good old conservative land, but that isn't necessarily internally what is the case. And so I don't know, maybe the Democrats thought that their allies within the Republican Party would win the day, but apparently not turning out that way. So another victory for Trump, another victory for the Republican Party, victory for Texas, victory for America, as was the inflation report that was released yesterday. Fantastic winning numbers all over the place, where even CNN were like, we can't believe these numbers. So we'll share some of that coming up. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 90. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 67. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 93. And taking a look at Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 95.
What is this? I've not heard this bumper music. Is this new?
That's Noah Kahan and Post Malone.
Oh,
It's been in there for a while.
okay. I don't know why I haven't
Yeah,
recognized
maybe it
it.
just hasn't rotated.
Oh, all right. So this is an announcement before we get to these totally winning, awesome inflation numbers, which, by the way, once again, the experts underestimated how good they were going to be. I know that's shocking. It's very shocking. Although they got much closer. The Wall Street Journal was off by 1/10 of a percentage point. So that's pretty darn close. Got to give them some credit there. Those of you who are going on our great escape, just those of you who aren't, just bear with me for a moment. One of the things that we do every great escape is get a private catamaran that is not covered in the cost because not everyone wants to do it. And so we don't want to have people pay if they don't want to go on the catamaran. And this particular catamaran is going to be, I think it's 4 hours, and it's just a lot of fun. If you've been on our catamarans before, you know how much fun they are. Take us out, and they've got usually like a DJ and then the bartender, and they take us out and snorkel in an area, and then they usually take us to an area that has sort of like a sandbar, so everybody can get out and be waist deep or chest deep in the beautiful crystal clear waters and stand out there drinking and having a good time. And it's just always, to me, every catamaran that we're on, I just think, with the except one, the weather was kind of blah. That was years ago. But other than that, I'm just like, these are the most fun things.
They really are so much fun.
They are so much fun. One of them was, dare I say, actually magical, and it was the last, I believe, Jamaican trip, and it was. The weather was beautiful, and there were dolphins that were, jumping all around.
And there was the caves. Do you remember the caves?
Yes, swimming in these caves, and then you swim in the cave, and there was way up top, there was a hole, and the sunshine came through. It was like something from Goonies. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing, and it's just a really fun experience. And Cam had, I think it was last week, actually sent me an email saying, hey, the deadline for people to get signed up is the 15th. Is that what it was?
Yes.
Okay. And I realized, that's just a few days away. If you have not signed up, then, and if it's something that you're thinking about doing, or maybe you have more questions because you haven't been on one and you have not been on the Great Escape, I would reach out to Cam. All of you who are going already know how to do that. And just, ask her whatever questions that you may have. And it's just a great time. I don't remember the cost. I don't know, it's usually like $150 or something, but it is so worth it. Absolutely. Now, if you're somebody that on boats you get seasick and throw up violently and have seizures every time, then probably not for you. But if you're just a normal person that doesn't do that and like to have a good time, I highly recommend that you do it. In fact, the way that whole thing started was in Jamaica. And there were, you can just, the catamarans, they go out and you sign up for them and you end up going with a bunch of different people. And there was a couple that had signed up for one, and then they talked to a couple other people from the group. And at one point, the people who ran it grabbed Cam and said, hey, everyone who has signed up so far has been from your group. If you get this many more people, we'll just make it private. And so that's what ended up happening. And there were a lot of people who went on the Great Escape that, because it just happened sort of organically at last minute, that didn't catch wind of it, and then they heard how much fun we had, and they're like, hey, how come we didn't know about this? And we would have loved to have gone. We're like, hey, we just, it just sort of happened, and that's when we decided, we need to do this every year. And it's just been an absolute blast every year. And I highly recommend it. If you have not gotten signed up for it, or you just have some questions about it and you're going on the Great Escape in November, just reach out to Cam, and she'll get you all set up.
Couple things to add there. It's not $150.
Oh, it's not?
It's $130.
Oh, okay.
And we have 33 spots left on that.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be Thursday, November 13th, for those of you going on the Great Escape.
All right, very good. It's fun.
And that's what I have.
It is fun. Was that in that email, or is that an addition?
I went back 3 or 4 emails.
Okay.
So there you go.
Inflation report is here. July's consumer price index report indicates inflation is cooling more than expected, better than the experts predicted. As usual, you can bet Jerome Powell is like, boy, Trump's never going to let up on this. I just, when they re-meet in September, the fury that will fly if they still do not make a move on interest rates. I think even to people that do not default to Trump's judgment on the economy, at some point are going to have to start saying, okay, guys, I mean, come on. What needs to happen here in order for, are we still going to pretend like doom and gloom is around the corner? Are we still going to pretend like inflation is going to spike? Consumer prices rose 2.7% in the 12 months since last July. These are all very healthy numbers that match the 12-month period since June and came in below the expected rate of 2.8%. Core CPI, often considered a more accurate reading of long-term trends in the economy, rose by only 0.3% and 3.1% from a full year ago. New vehicle prices often, we kept hearing, the average vehicle price was going to raise by $5,600, somewhere around there, unchanged. Used cars and trucks climbed by 0.5 of 1 percentage point. Transportation, medical care services each rose by only 0.8 of 1 percentage inflation point. This is all continued fantastic, and it's just, do these people ever get tired of being wrong? This is what I would like to know. I mean, how many times do you have to be wrong before you say maybe, just maybe Trump knows what he's doing? It doesn't mean that Trump is going to be correct 100% of the time, but for Pete's sakes, people, what does it take? You could almost understand the instinct if Trump were predicting things were going to be awful and bad, and you're like, well, I trust Trump, I believe him, but I kind of hope he's wrong because I want. But he's like, this is all good for us. These are good things. These are positive things. It's difficult for me to wrap my mind around people who just instinctually want things to be bad for America. So much so that when they're good, they want to dismiss them, they want to downplay them, they want to act like they're really not that good after all. Unless, of course, it has to do with crime in a jurisdiction that they're in charge of. Then all of a sudden, that they see as wonderful. Think how twisted their minds are? All of the things that are going very well for the average American, they downplay, they tell us, well, you just wait till next week. You wait till next month. Oh, boy, it's going to be worse. It's the worst thing ever. But then when you have a situation in which somebody, Trump, and Washington, D.C., clearly a problem that everyone knows has been a problem, this is completely undeniable, and that they want to pretend like is fine. That they want to pretend like is perfectly, no. Now that's your definition of good? Yesterday, Caroline Leavitt going over, I'm sure she enjoyed this from the press room at the White House, the latest inflation numbers.
Beat market expectations once again, and inflation remains stable. Overall, inflation has run at a 1.9 average annual pace in President Trump's first 6 months in office. Prices for everyday goods continue to decline. Energy prices fell in July, including gasoline, which is down nearly 10% over last year, and propane, which is down 2.5% over last year as well. Egg prices fell once again in July and are down 20% since President Trump took office. Shelter inflation, the largest contributor to overall inflation, is at its lowest level since October of 2021. Wage growth for American workers is beating inflation once again. As inflation declines, this administration continues to be wholeheartedly committed to putting more money back into the American people's pockets. American real wages are up 1.3% over last year and have increased each month since President Trump took office. And small business optimism, according to this morning's report, has also reached a 5-month high. Ignore the panicans and trust in President Trump.
I think about audio that has been circulating. Jimmy Kimmel was on with Sarah Silverman, and I guess her podcast. I don't know. Maybe he has one as well. I'm not sure. And he was talking about how he got his Italian citizenship, and just to leave the option open. And the reason being, the two of them were talking about how, as bad as they thought things would be under Trump, it's worse than they ever imagined. And I'm like, what are you? What? By what gauge? I mean, like, what, other than in your mind, the things that you know, that he's awful and he's Hitler, but in terms of results, the actual, not what's going on in your mind, not these, dare I say, borderline delusions, this fantasy world you have created of concentration camps and LGBTQ people being tracked down in the streets and beaten with clubs that say MAG on them, and all of these things that you predict. I know in your mind, I guess this is the fantasy world you created, but in terms of reality, these actual results, this is such, and boy, does it really give you a clarity when it comes to the disconnect of the uber wealthy liberals like Jimmy Kimmel and the average American, and why it is that the Republican Party under Trump has become the working person's party, and why it is that the average person in this country has no interest in watching someone like Jimmy Kimmel, because he is such an elitist smug that is completely disconnected from what affects the average American. And this is a guy who has more wealth than 99.999% of Americans could ever comprehend. And he's going on and on about how it's so awful, his life is so horrible in a country that has made him a multimillionaire Lord knows how many times over, that he just might have to leave this country. What spoiled, entitled, precious little piece of crap these rich elitists are. While the rest of us are, some of these are just incredible. CNN, I want to play coming up. They even are somewhat amazed at how well things are going for the average American when it comes to the cost of average things under President Donald Trump. That coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company, text line 417447. KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Before traffic, 0.99% interest rates. It's just winning everywhere. Winning absolutely everywhere under President Donald Trump. And at Pinnaker Honda, 0.99% rates available on select certified pre-owned vehicles. There's the Honda Ridgeline 2025, wanting to get into a brand new pickup. Rates as low as 0.99% there as well. What a time to be alive. The 2026 Honda Prologue, if you're into the EV thing, lease for $189 a month, and that includes a Tesla adapter. Take advantage of the $7,500 EV tax credit before that is gone. Offer in September 30th. So if you are one of those folks that electric vehicle accommodates your needs, your wants, your desires, they got something for you as well. And then those of us that like the good old-fashioned gasoline, if anything, just because of the smell. Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn, also under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com.
Field's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 90. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 67. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 93. And taking a look at Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 95.
I opened the show noting that several sources had told a news affiliate in Texas that Democrats that ran away from the fight regarding redistricting to Illinois were going to be coming back, and Republicans in the Senate in Texas went ahead and approved that redistricting map. And I noted that one of the reasons that we were told January 6th was so awful is because it was stopping the transfer of power, the peaceful transition of power, that this is one of the constitutional roles of these elected officials. And in an attempt to stop that from occurring, that was a threat to democracy that was worse than 9/11. It was as bad as the Holocaust and so forth. Well, the Democrats in Texas, that's the whole reason that they fled, was to stop government from functioning. Same thing, was to prevent the elected officials from the ability to do their job. And I said it's almost like the inverse of the insurrection. And someone had texted in and they said they called it the inverse erection. And I like that. It's really good. It was an inverse erection. I like that. Sounds just flows very nicely. The inflation report came out yesterday, better than the experts expected. Fantastic all around. Some of the numbers absolutely incredible, including food, actually down 0.1%, which is remarkable when you consider the fact that conventional wisdom is that inflation never reverses, right? I mean, you're always going to have some degree of inflation, even if it's as low as 0.1%. So when you have a drop in the actual pricing by 0.1%, that may not seem like a lot, but given that there is generally, in a very, very healthy economy, a small degree of inflation occurring, that's a pretty remarkable thing. We played Caroline Leavitt, obviously going through the breakdown of Americans winning when it comes to the cost of things and the lack of inflation, relatively speaking, to the previous administration. Even CNN had to acknowledge yesterday how good these numbers are.
What are you saying? A tamer inflation report despite President Trump's tariffs. This is better than expected. Month over month, as you mentioned, up 0.2%. On an annual basis, up 2.7% in July. That's also what we saw on an annual basis for the month of June. When you look at the key categories that we always look at, energy, food, and shelter, energy fell by 1.1%. That was largely driven because of gas prices falling in the month of July by 2.2%. Look at that food. I mean, this is where people spend their money, right? Food every single day. Food flat, 0%, and actually down at the grocery store by 0.1%. And then shelter, we always usually see an increase because that is what people are paying on rent. And we know that rents are rising. That is usually the biggest share of this report.
Now, what is summer, in terms of price increases, generally known for? Gas prices going up. If all things steady, summer is when they go up. They go up because you get the blend in there. You got the summer blend, and you have a lot more people traveling. So to have such a significant drop in gas prices, contributing to the overall drop in energy prices in this country is it's fantastic. You know what somebody needs to do? Remember the Biden stickers pointing that says, "I did that"? Somebody needs to have Trump ones made up so people can start putting those on the gas pumps, right where those Biden ones were, saying, "I did that." That's what what a great idea. What a fantastic idea I just had.
Maybe we should make
I
those.
can't believe,
and
I guess
his shirt can have the KSGF logo on
Springfield Wraps can do it.
There we go.
That being said, we've got a bunch more from them. KSGF stickers, including pretty decent sized Trump doing the fight thing after he was shot, and the background of the flag behind him. We have some of those. We'll have them out with us at Scramblers on Friday during the Friday Roadshow. But yeah, Springfield Wraps, they could come up with some of those. I did that. And yeah, I like the KSGF. Of course, I don't know. Then they could come. I don't know. Some of the gas stations, like, guys, would you stop putting stickers on? Like, well, hey, it's not us. We're not doing it. Well, I don't know. Hey, some people say it's not us. Now, I go back to, and I referenced Jimmy Kimmel, and there's a number of articles and audio of this. I don't want to play the audio because it's just, I don't know, hearing his voice. And he was on the Sarah Silverman podcast, and he said to her, I did get Italian citizenship. I do have that. And he's talking about in America. He said, what's going on is as bad as you thought it was going to be. It's so much worse. It's just unbelievable. I feel like it's probably even worse than he would like it to be, talking about Trump. Silverman said she occasionally looks up MAGA regrets to see Trump supporters upset at the president's leadership, adding that this makes her hope it can unify people and bring them together. By the way, this is part of the reason that the left lives in a bubble. What Sarah Silverman said right there. See, she goes to the internet and she Googles what she wants to see in order to make herself feel better, as if that is a representation of what is going on largely in this country. Which, of course, is absurd. I can Google people who eat chocolate-covered cicadas, and I will find people that do that talk about how wonderful it is. But that is not a representation of the population at large. That is a very, very, very small portion. But this is what the media in particular, and it's trained the left to be delusional about what is going on in this country. It's also why they get so shocked when Trump wins and they just fall apart and they just can't fathom it. And it's because they do stuff like that. And I think it's an interesting acknowledgement from a rich left-wing woman, white woman, that when she's feeling down, she Googles MAGA regrets so that she can feel validated and feel as if, no, people do hate all of these people that voted for Trump. They're very sorry about it. And it's amazing. It shouldn't. I guess it's not amazing. And why the average Democrat who just rails on rich people and claims that the Republican Party is filled with rich people, why do you not recognize the fact that some of the most anti-Trump voices out there are rich white people? The people that you claim you can't say, they are the 0.001 percenters. That's your side. The Ellen DeGeneres, the Rosie O'Donnells, the Jimmy Kimmels, that all just go at the Sarah Silvermans. Does that really seem like the blue-collar party to you? And of course, as usual, when they talk about things being worse than ever, they don't give actual specific results that are a demonstration of things are worse than anyone could have ever imagined. They aren't giving an example of the border. They're not giving examples of the brink of war. They tried to for about 30 minutes. Remember that? Donald Trump started World War III with Iran. How long did that last? They can't give examples of things are worse than anyone expected when it comes to gas prices or grocery prices or overall energy prices or the prices of vehicles. They can't point to the worse than expected results of tariffs causing massive inflation. None of what they talk about when it's how horrible it is ever about something that's actually happening. It's just their feelings. Well, boo-hoo. Incidentally, part of the reason that people like Jimmy Kimmel make these announcements is because they are so narcissistic that they think that is really going to hit the average American, that regardless of everything that's going on in our own lives, when we hear that Jimmy Kimmel might leave the United States, that is what's going to really resonate with us. That is going to be the great canary in the coal mine that, oh my goodness, if somebody like America's darling Jimmy Kimmel, that is so important to all of us, is thinking about leaving this country. Maybe I just have underestimated how bad Trump is. That's the level of narcissism from these people on the left that make these announcements about, well, I'm just going to have to leave the country. Oh, okay. And I guess we all need to really care. Just do it. By the way, you don't have to do it out of protest. You know, that's life. If you live somewhere and you don't like it there because you feel that the quality of life is not what you want, you go somewhere where you feel it's going to be better. People do it all the time in this country. They leave California for Florida and Texas. They leave New York for Tennessee and Florida and Texas all the time. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. People don't care that much. Another new poll coming out after the traffic update. And this is another polling. This is Gallup. And it's Democrat approval, lowest it's been since the history of the polling has been in existence. I mean, we just continue to see this over and over and over again. And yet another one out of the gate. Next, I'm Nick Reed. HunterHardscapes.com, premier landscaping service in the 417 and in my backyard in Republic, turning my wife and I into, outdoor patio people sitting around the fire pit. Bit too hot, in order to use that fire pit, but it is going to be used Friday. The girl child, she's like, can I have some friends over? She goes, do you think we could hang up a sheet and we use the projector? And it's the first time we've been in this house, I don't know, 9-10 years, something like that. And this is brand new territory, and it's because we have this patio. And it sounds like, well, you could have always done it before. And yeah, I guess so, but it's just fact of the matter. Sometimes until you actually have that comfortable, inviting outdoor living space, you don't utilize your backyard in the way that you could. And it's not the sort of thing that we're like, well, we better go out and use it because we got it. It's just, in fact, we were out. We have a little dinner group of friends, a small group, and we get together about once every 3 or 4 months or so. As soon as we get home, my wife, she goes, you want to go sit outside? I was like, yeah, go sit outside before we go to bed. And it's just, I don't know, it's an incredible lifestyle change that is for the better for us. And you paid for that lot that your home is on anyhow. You might as well make it part of your living space. HunterHardscapes.com is the site for Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. They're incredible people. Cannot brag enough about them. And you can find them under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. Good question. Texted in on the Pyramid Roofing text line. Say, just curious, if the food prices they mentioned went down, what went up, since the overall is only 0.01% decrease in food costs? And this is coming from a Trumpster. So I think the question there is talking about, now they say there may be a distinction here, so I want to be specific, that food itself was 0%. At the grocery store, it was down 0.1%. And so that may be a differential between maybe wholesale or restaurants. But, when it comes to overall food, 0%. But this is a good question. So, okay, well, what went up? And the thing that went up only 0.2% month to month was, wait, let me make sure that's the right thing. It was housing. And this is what makes up the largest expense for the average person. And so obviously it's weighted a bit. I was going to see if I could have the whole listing of these. So the consumer prices rose overall. This was 12 months, 2.7%, which was below the 2.8% expected. The core CPI, which is considered the more accurate reading of the long-term trend of the economy, rose 0.3% for the month, 3.1% from a year ago. So shelter cost was the thing that ticked up 0.2%, which accounts for most of the index gain because, again, that is the largest expense for most people. And energy prices down 1.1%, and again, food even at zero with grocery prices down 0.1%. Household furnishings and supplies went up 0.7% after a 1% jump in June, so that would add to it as well. So that's the reason that even though food prices were 0 to down, there was just a slight bit of an increase. But these are extremely, extremely healthy numbers. Democrat Party's favorability rating dropping to 34%. This is the lowest level ever recorded in Gallup's trend since the survey began tracking the measure in 92. And what we are seeing consistently is all of these polling outfits that are surveying in order to get a determination as to the Democrat Party's favorability rating, and they're all registering the lowest numbers that they've ever registered since the beginning of whichever polling outfit it may be at the time. The new Gallup survey shows Americans' favorability view of the Democrat Party falling to 34%. Historical trend data shows Democratic Party favorability generally ranged between the upper 40s to around 60%. Through the 90s and early 2000s, the measure has since trended lower. Notable drops in the mid-2010s, early 2020s, falling from about 54% in the early 90s to 34% today. And it is, you still hear some of the conversation. Generally, it comes from more level-headed people. Harold Ford Jr. will use as an example, former Democrat congressman from Tennessee. And he is on the 5, oftentimes, on Fox News. He's, the Democrat giving the Democrat perspective. And one of the messages that he consistently sends when talking about this sort of stuff is that he would love to see his party start talking about ideas instead of just hitting on Trump. Well, the problem is their ideas are bad ideas. This is what... There seems to be a real struggle of understanding for some of these Democrats who say, we need to get out there and talk about ideas. Your ideas are bad. Look at the people in your party that are talking about your ideas. There's still Mamdani being an example. Replacing police with counselors. Taking grocery stores and making them government run like was in the former Soviet Union and in Cuba. Having anti-Semitic policies. So, it isn't, yes, there is a lack of messaging oftentimes, or the messaging is all anti-Trump, but even when you talk about your policies, the American people don't like it. The policies of sex change operations for kids, the policies of tampons in boys' bathrooms, the policies of forcing girls to lose out on college scholarships or slots on the Olympic team or whatever it may be because of this insane obsession with forcing girls to take a knee if a boy decides he wants to compete against them in order to have a physical advantage. Those are your policy positions. People don't like them. And so really, the only way outside of just eventually convincing enough Americans that Republicans are evil and Democrats are good and getting a majority of Americans to stop caring about actual results, other than that, It is to change fundamentally who you are as a party. And at this point, the last time Democrats did that in such a successful, now some may point to Obama, but Clinton came in. Jimmy Carter prior to that was the previous Democrat president, and he sort of redirected the Democrat Party. He was somebody that adopted and worked with Republicans, begrudgingly at times, however, in order to implement things like, you hear the term super predator that Democrats today claim is a racist term. That was a term that Democrats used. That was a part of the crime bill. That was a Clinton term that oftentimes got used. Welfare to work. Even being opposed to partial birth abortion, part of the Democrat Party stance at the time. They were for border security. They were against gay marriage. They were, all of these things. That was when they were much more relevant and connected to the average American. But what has happened today is the lunatics are the ones that are grabbing the helm instead of the reasonable people like Bill Clinton back in the 90s who understood what resonated with average Americans and sort of recalibrated the Democrat Party in order to be a reflection of that. Those days are gone. Right, to the point, coming up, Teamsters unions are increasingly donating, not just to Republicans, like, oh, well, a Republican's going to win, so we might as well get in their good graces, but talking about battleground states. These are states in which Republicans could potentially be in danger. The Teamsters are stepping up to now help Republicans win in these particular districts. The days of the Democrat Party being the party of the working person is over. Springfield's Talk 1041, and welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed. Sarah Myers is here.
That's me. I am here.
It is her. She is her. Her, sure. Pronouns.
Don't.
She, her.
Don't. Nope. I'll start with that pronoun stuff.
Dean Cain, who played Superman, and he's an outspoken conservative guy, so of course he always gets reamed. And I guess he decided that he's going to join ICE in order to help enforce the border.
I saw that. I talked about it on my show.
Which to me is just as honorable as somebody who signs up for the military. Mm-hmm. Now, there are obviously much different challenges. A person who is a member of ICE gets to stay here on the homeland, and so they aren't separated from their family. There are additional challenges and burdens of signing up for the military and serving overseas when, in fact, that does happen, particularly in battle. Now, some people, if it's peacetime, they're able to take, families, if they're going to be in Germany or something along those lines. But, it's amazing that when you're talking about securing our border, that I mean, is there any, I don't know, it just to me seems as if for most people, if you stop and think about it, that's one of the most important things about national security is in, keeping those borders secure. And yet you have universally the Democrat Party painting those people who sign up in order to be part of securing our homeland, securing our border, as Nazis. I mean, the Democrat Party has never really been a big fan of our military anyhow, spitting on troops when they were coming back from war and, calling them baby killers and so forth. Today, they sort of virtue signal and pretend, at least, I mean, not overtly, but if they're running for election, there's just a certain environment or event going on in which it is military-centric. They will pay lip service to the military. But this, when you think about what it is that the people who volunteer for ICE and particularly face, I mean, you have Democrats that are in some states and even on a national level pushing to force ICE agents that at times are responsible for capturing drug cartels and human traffickers to have their face exposed so that the drug cartels, the drug leaders, and the human traffickers will know who to come after. That is no different, practically speaking, than if we have troops serving overseas to somehow broadcast to the enemy their location and who they are and who their family is. They want to portray these people that are being deported as, these single moms that just have no other option in life. But we know the reality of it. These people, some of them are convicted rapists, they're child molesters, they're human traffickers. Part of the reason that Mexico has become so corrupt and recognized as essentially being run by the drug cartel is because the cartels identify people in law enforcement or government that are fighting back, and they go after their families and they go after them and they kill them. Well, those people have now gotten into the United States of America. And so, because of the reality of how it is that they operate and the way that they will go after family members, they will go after ICE agents in order to intimidate, and they'll go so far as murdering and torturing. They mask their faces. And you have Democrats that say, no, we want to make sure that these drug cartels know exactly who it is that they need to go after. It is inconceivable how awful the Democrat Party has become when it comes to some of their policy positions. How anti-American, Do you know that ICE agents are disproportionately high in Hispanics in terms of the number of employees that are Hispanic? So here you have a job, one that is serving this country in a national defense capacity, with a disproportionately high number of Hispanics, and you have the Democrat Party pushing to make them exposed to murder and torture and potential kidnapping by drug cartels and human traffickers. It really is as if they have gotten to the point that, whether it's Trump has driven them so insane or they're just so power hungry, they do not care whose lives they put in danger. They just look at D.C. running around pretending, trying to tell everyone it's fine, everything's okay, you don't need help. I mean, is there no one other than yourselves and your own power that you care about? Is no life sacred? Is there no one that you see as a few eggs that have to get broken once in a while for you to have your omelet of power? This is why increasingly just normal Americans, many of which once upon a time traditionally raised generationally in the Democrat realm, are no longer doing so. The Teamsters Union. I mean, who would have thought? The Teamsters Union is reportedly donating to battleground Republicans. As the midterms approach, the news coming after the group supported Democrats for years, this according to reporting from Politico. This is one of those organizations that, better or worse, I think pretty much everyone is written off as, well, what is the point in trying to cater to these people? They will never vote for anybody other than a Democrat. All they do is funnel money, launder taxpayer dollars, or launder their employees' paychecks right back to the Democrat Party. But here we are today. And battleground states, this isn't a situation in which, it's a red state and it's always going to be a red state, and so you want to be in some good favor with your Republican senator, so you make donations because you know that they're going to win, and so you want to be able to pick up the phone and get them on the other end. These are battleground states in which these dollars and this support can be the difference between whether a Democrat wins or a Republican wins, and the Teamsters are going for the Republicans. According to the Politico article published Monday, Teamsters President Sean O'Brien is, quote, signaling a more permanent realignment in the form of donations going to Republicans. For the second year in a row, the labor union's political arm donated to the Republicans' House campaign arm after nearly 2 decades of mostly backing Democrats. The labor union's Drive Political Action Committee, Democrats, Republicans, Independent Voter Education, gave the National Republican Congressional Committee $5,000 in the second quarter. In addition to giving the NRCC, Teamsters doled out a combined $62,000 in contributions to nearly 24 GOP congressional candidates, including in significant battleground districts. Now, let me tell you what that means. That means that they are strategically putting their money in places that they believe will help Republicans keep the power in Congress. Now, here's something to really blow your mind. And you can take this and just not think about it if you want, because it just messes your mind too much. There were a number of articles a few years ago about how it was discovered. It was the election it was the last election that Democrats continued to hold power in the House. Does that make sense the way I'm describing that? So it was the the election that took place in which Democrats controlled and retained power before Republicans took over. And it was discovered that the Chamber of Commerce had been funneling donations to Democrats in battleground states in order to make sure that Democrats won. So we live in a world now, and I think that Democrats are not waking up and acknowledging reality here. They are still living in denial, in terms of the party and the activists. Republicans are slowly starting to recognize it, and part of that's because Trump is forcing them to. Unions once upon a time, no holds barred, Democrat tried and true. Chamber of Commerce, 100% Republican, red state. And what we have seen occur, and this is in the Trump era, whether it's, you could argue how much of the chamber is the Trump situation versus the unions, but where we have seen the Chamber of Commerce donate money in an effort to keep Democrats in charge of Congress. And the Teamsters are now funneling money, significant money, to Republicans in order to help them keep power in the upcoming midterm elections. How does that blow your mind? Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 90. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 67. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 93. And taking a look at Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 95.
I mentioned that with the announcement, and particularly during summer when traditionally you see gas prices go up, they've actually gone down. That you recall after Biden became president and inflation and gas prices and his energy policies and all of these stickers were popping up and being sold of Biden saying, I did that, pointing, and people would put them on the gas pumps where you would be pointing to the price display. And I said, somebody needs the Trump ones now. Do the same thing. And one of you was kind enough to send in a snapshot where you did a search there on eBay. So they exist. I think they're funny because there's different versions. And in my head, it would be so funny to see like the 3 different versions of him kind of pointing,
just all around?
All around. But you could put it on pricing of lots of different things. But so I haven't seen them show up yet on the pump, but when that starts to happen, then I'll be very pleased. I guess I could help make it happen by doing it myself, but I'd rather just watch it happen from the sidelines, organically. Springfield News Leader article, Ozarks public broadcasting changes cannot be invisible after federal cuts, says the manager. So, in other words, you are just going to have to go through what every other media outlet in the United States has to go through, other than those that get to take taxpayer dollars out of their paycheck. It is... I don't know. I feel like saying it confounds me. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it shouldn't. These people just don't, like, what world are you living in? They act, and I think they even internally feel as if somehow they are victims. As if they're having to deal with something that no one should ever have to do. Guess what? You have been protected from the realities of the marketplace your entire existence. You have lived a privileged life. The people of NPR and PBS have lived a privileged life to where, you don't have to worry about whether or not you provide a product that is valuable enough to the market that it self-sustains itself. You just get more money from the taxpayers because you have allies that will write laws that force people against their will to pay for you to continue to exist. Now, I'd be embarrassed. And I would be, not to say I'd be embarrassed to work in that environment, but I would be embarrassed to behave this way whenever that gravy train and that world of privilege came to an end. This is no different than, some spoiled, privileged teenager that just acts as if it is some violation of their human rights, and they're just indignant over the fact that all of a sudden they're going to have to work to the same degree as all of the other people around them. Well, I shouldn't have to do that. There's no shame at all. Welcome to the real world. Welcome to the world of all of the rest of us. You know what happens to the rest of us if we are not able to be self-sustained? What you're going through. You would think that radio and television outlets that are supposed to be in existence for educating people, filled with individuals that are very knowledgeable, you would know this. It's amazing how these institutions that we're told are so important because they're so educational seem to be lacking the very basic knowledge about what goes on in the real world. I mean, it's just crazy to me. I try to analogize it. What if there was some burger chain? What if, McDonald's was subsidized, like you and I, they got Congress, there was a little institution that was set up, a nonprofit that directed, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to McDonald's. And if they were ever going in the hole, don't worry, we'll give you more money because you're so important. Don't worry about it. And then one day they're like, you know what? You are going to now have to operate like all the other Five Guys and Wendy's and Culver's and Burger King, and then McDonald's acting like, oh my God, and the media, what will people do without hamburgers? No, there are still lots of hamburgers. This is how they act. This is how they behave. What's crazy is these other news outlets, like the News Leader, that are dependent on providing a product that allows them to be self-sustained, not like it like doesn't penetrate their brains, that here they are acting, feeling sorry for these people that have never had to survive like the rest of us when it comes to operating media outlets. Now, of course, the News Leader, it's owned by Gannett, and so oftentimes you may be losing revenue, and you're subsidized by other markets and so forth. But you just don't get this guarantee that, oh, don't worry, in Washington, they'll just make taxpayers pay for it. So you don't really have to worry about whether or not you perform at a level that is self-sustaining. There are two parts of the story that I find particularly amusing. One, and by the way, in their minds, and I think they do believe this, without them, there will be no news, and we're all going to die from tornadoes. Oh, and children will not be able to learn. This is at least the way that they present themselves. And again, the news leader is spreading the propaganda, very happily. And it's so dishonest. It is so dishonest. And I'll explain why coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company text line 417-447-KSGF. If you have the KSGF app, then you don't even have to remember the number. There's a little text button that you just tap, and then you put your message in, and it'll get right here to the studio. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump it over to traffic here. We'll have a look at the weather. Gosh, the heat's bad. I thought we were going to get a bit of relief and rain this week. Apparently not. All that ahead. I'm Nick Reed.
Fields Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 90. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 67. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 93. And taking a look at Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 95.
Emily Johnson is the Swiss Army knife of realtors. I say that because a lot of realtors are just straight up knife. This is one job: help you sell the house or help you buy a house. That's it. But if you read the reviews from people who have used Emily Johnson to help sell their home or help buy a home, they're usually listing in there all the other things that she did that they did not expect, that were added bonuses. For example, an expert when it comes to any sort of required upgrades or repairs. That's one of the common themes that I've come across, people who have had to sell their homes and somebody puts in an offer, but hey, we need the sidewalk repaired and some termite damage and, a couple other things, whatever they may be. And, you're like, well, okay, I don't know who to use. I've never had that done before. Yeah, it's easy to find, but are they good? Are they going to take advantage of the fact they know that this is part of my, necessary repair in order to sell the home, and so they can take advantage of me financially? Emily Johnson, she knows all of because this is what she does all the time. So she knows who's good. She knows who's reliable. And so instead of just the single blade knife that only does the one thing, she's like the Swiss Army knife. And there's dozens of different ways that she can help you buy and sell your home. So that's why I recommend her. Who doesn't like a Swiss Army knife? Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. The hand-wringing continues over this defunding of media outlets that have for years and years and years been taking by force, against our will, money from the taxpayers. And it has created this absurd and obscene sense of entitlement that as media outlets, PBS and NPR should not have to operate like everyone else in media, that they should not have to produce a product that they, in turn, are able to make self-sustaining financially. That's what the rest of us have to do. And this just privileged position and indignancy that they should suddenly have to worry about these things. The news leader has a headline: Ozark Public Broadcasting changes cannot be invisible after federal. We're going to have to make these. That's life. There are two aspects of the story, however, that one is dubious, the other is just straight up dishonest. Well, two. Let's see here. Two are dishonest, one's dubious. Start with the dubious. And it's the assertion that children are not going to be able to learn. Recently, Rebecca Dorr, Director of Research at the Crane Center for Early Childhood Research and Policy at The Ohio State University, this is what we call an expert, surveyed parents and caregivers about the kind of media used by 346 first graders. Now, there's no methodology laid out here. She's not listed as being with some organization that has expertise in surveying. Sounds like just this chick that was like, hey, I'm going to ask around. She and her fellow researchers found that only about 12% of the content that kids consumed could be described as educational. In an August 4th column for The Conversation, Dorr described how she later broke down the data by media outlets. Quote, I learned that PBS accounted for 45% of the educational TV or videos that parents said their kids watched most often. This makes PBS the top source for children's educational programming by far. For kids with little or no access to preschool programming, the educational shows on Ozark Public Television, like Sesame Street, Wild Kratts, Daniel's Tiger's Neighborhood, are crucial for the development. Knight said that as many as 90,000 kids between 2 and 12 watch OPTV Weekly. Now, Dorr, who is responsible for this research that has revealed to us that kids without PBS are going to be dumb, previously consulted for PBS Kids, which meant she was paid by them. So they found somebody who did a survey that used to get paid by PBS in order to determine how important PBS is to kids. I'm sure there's absolutely no bias baked into that whatsoever. Now, the two dishonest assertions here that are common, and I don't know how much of this is the news leader, how much of it is dishonest propaganda versus increasingly, I think that, quote, journalists, they're just, well, not just journalists, but people just don't think. There's no critical thinking. And so they will oftentimes get told things to which there is an obvious, not red flag, but, well, what about this? And they either ignore that and cover it up, or they just don't have the ability to think critically in that fashion. And one of these assertions is that for people who can't afford the internet and cable, public media may be the only source of news they have access to. The news leader writes, while many people get their news from the internet or cable television programs like Fox or CNN, that's not possible for everyone, especially those in areas with poor internet connections or who can't afford cable or satellite. I think it's very easy for people in this day and age to say there are plenty of options, but the truth is that's only true for some people. The universal service mission of public media means that we don't leave people out. So now here's the thing. The claim is that not everyone can afford the internet and not everyone can afford cable. And so there's all these people, all they can watch is public broadcasting. Well, public broadcasting is on public airwaves, which means you get it with you get a little antenna. And once you have that, it's sort of like a radio. It's free. Once you purchase the hardware, it's free. But guess what else is? NBC, CBS, ABC. You've got the local news affiliates for each of those, KY3, KSPR, Color 10, Fox 49. If you are capable of getting PBS, you are capable of getting every single one of those other news outlets. So to pretend that there is some scenario in which a person might, that they could only have access to PBS and no other source of news. So if PBS goes away, they'll have nothing. That is just untrue. That's dishonest. The other dishonest claim, and it's almost funny, is that it's public safety. Something that many people don't realize. Knight said this Knight person is sorry, and it's one of the people with Knight. Sorry, I want to be able to cite the person. It's one of the two. Rachel Knight, yes. Ozark Public Broadcasting General Manager. Thank you very much. I should have highlighted that. I failed to do so. Something that many don't realize, Knight said, is the role public broadcasting plays in keeping America safe in natural disasters. While it's common knowledge that public broadcasting can push out emergency alerts on radio or television, it also serves as a backup path for transmitting crucial messages to your cell phone. There's sort of a single point of failure when these emergency alerts come from FEMA out to mobile carriers to users. As we know, when there's a natural disaster, that's the most likely time for new technologies to fail. A single point of failure means that all the people wouldn't get their emergency alerts. What the public television station has been able to offer, because we have transmission locations in virtually every corner of the U.S., we cover upwards of 99% of the population. We are the backup path that ensures if the link is broken, these alerts can still be get to public carriers or mobile carriers out to the public. And but here's the thing: what they're talking about is like over the the again, public airwaves, be it radio or television. And I don't know if you've ever noticed this or not, but you know how those emergency alert systems you hear? Because this is presumably what she's talking about, that's the backup to the new technologies and all the newfangled stuff. And for people that don't have the cell phones, we have the good old-fashioned tried and true emergency alert system. You ever notice you hear randomly on any radio station those tests that references as a required weekly test? This is a requirement for all radio stations and television stations that use the public airwaves to do. In fact, we don't even have control over it. When you hear, and that's why so often if you flip around on the different dials, you will hear the exact same emergency alert broadcast. Now, some may carry a wider footprint than others do, depending on the station. But the reason when oftentimes if you flip around and you hear the exact, it's because it is overriding what the radio station is actually broadcasting at that time. The radio station isn't stopping and saying, oh, we need to air this. It just happens. For the vast majority of stations, you have sort of the stations that push it out and so forth that get designated to do so. But point being, the areas in which so-called public broadcasters try and portray themselves as the only outlets that do these certain things, every station that uses the public airwaves is required to do it as well. And again, we don't even have it overrides us. So if, for example, PBS just went away, or NPR completely went away, the tornado warnings, the severe thunderstorm warnings, any sort of national emergency that occurred would still go out over every single other radio station that exists and all of the public broadcasting stations that exist. And those are those that you don't have to pay for. You just get an antenna. Again, the major networks, ABC, CBS, PBS, or ABC, CBS, NBC. The fact that we continue to hear disinformation and either a deliberate attempt to mislead people about why it is that the public broadcasters are different than the rest of us in terms of importance and significance. It tells us, I think that even they know that they aren't as relevant as they would like to think. So they have to make up these scenarios to make you believe they're the only ones that are giving people this information when they're not. But is this also not why many Americans and members of Congress have called for defunding? Now, I don't believe we should fund them just because, again, it's not our job to prop these folks up, especially when it comes to media. But aside from that, it's because people argue that they disinform, they misinform based on their own political biases. So I think it's absolutely perfect that these institutions that portray themselves as somehow above everyone else and the arbiter of truth, and we're completely unbiased, and we are the one source you can believe, yet virtually all of their primary arguments against these cuts are disinformation. They're not telling you the truth. And I don't know how much of it is they've actually deluded themselves into believing much of this because, again, they've been able to live in their own privileged little world where they are told how important they are, and they haven't had to survive and live in the marketplace like the rest of us. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. The Foreman team, they are expanding, and if you're in the HVAC industry and you are ready to make a change, reach out to Russell. He is currently hiring for service techs. Foreman is locally owned, family owned, and just all around a great group of people. So if that sounds like something you're looking for, reach out to Russell and apply today. And of course, in the meantime, AC season is still in full swing. If your AC is blowing warm, maybe it's running nonstop, or maybe it's just making weird noises, the Foreman team can help you out with all of your HVAC needs. They offer residential and commercial services, and they can handle everything from just a simple AC tune-up to service repairs to new unit installs. And they also have a 24/7 emergency service line as well for those repairs that pop up after those normal business hours. Now you can reach out to Russell today, schedule that AC appointment, and of course you can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Pyramid Roofing Company text line. I remember the day, this is from the KSGF app. I remember the days of telethons, talking specifically PBS, where you would see fantastic things during the week that you would never see during the rest of the year. I don't know if they still do those any longer or not.
I don't know
I just
either.
don't. I just don't really watch PBS so much anymore. I mean, every once in a while there are things. And listen, I'm not saying they have bad programming. They have a lot of really great programming. That's not the point. One of the things a lot of people don't realize is because they're, quote, nonprofit, there are restrictions on them in terms of advertising that aren't on other stations and that you can't advertise. They can't have advertisers. They can have sponsors and supporters, which is a distinction without a difference. That's why whenever you will oftentimes hear the ads or see it, it'll reference is supported in part by, because then they're supporters. They're not advertisers. And so by slapping that label on them, somehow, that gets them around. It's silliness. It's government as usual. And I think that, some of that maybe need to change. Now, I don't know that that's tied to getting taxpayer revenue as much as being nonprofit, but, again, it's there are a lot of nonprofit stations out there, tons of them, that don't get government funding like NPR and PBS. And so it is possible. I think oftentimes that label is thrown around to make people believe, to think of it sort of like a charity, and the only way it can exist is this. But what is the number on the dial? There's a certain, on your dial, quote dial, the frequencies, the stations below a certain frequency are all not-for-profit stations. And I forget what that number, it may be 91 or 92, anything between 92.1. I forget exactly where it is, but all of those stations are also in that particular category. It's just they don't, of course, get to rely or haven't gotten to rely on politicians taking money out of hardworking Americans.
It's between 88.1 and 91.9.
Okay,
So
all
you're
right,
close.
yeah, I was, yeah. So,
And
well, no, I
also-
was, because anything between,
Yeah.
20.1 or whatever.
And PBS does not currently do telethons.
I wonder why they quit doing that. Well, maybe it just wasn't paying off for them.
Guess not.
Yeah, I don't know. One of my favorite King of Queen episodes was when Arthur made a donation because he wanted a tote bag, and they ran out of tote bags, so they sent him the much more valuable 10 VHS Civil War set, and he was really ticked off about it because he wanted the tote bag instead. He didn't care about the stupid Civil War set. Let's do traffic. I'm Nick Reed. Text message, I agree. PBS has had some decent programming, but if I had to pay for their news division spewing out a bunch of propaganda, forget it. I was watching, like maybe a lot of you do oftentimes on YouTube. It's like, oh, this never gets old. And it's a compilation of election night coverage from when Trump won. And one of the compilations included PBS coverage. And I was just watching it. And I haven't watched PBS during election night coverage. And it was so brazenly anti-Trump. And I was thinking back to the testimony of the CEO of PBS about how they're unbiased. And it was just hysterical to watch how anti-Republican and how Trump they are. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. It's always a great day for Democrats when they can find more than one reason to be outraged at Donald Trump. And one of today's reasons is because he is ordering sort of an overview of the different exhibits and displays in the Smithsonian to occur before America's 250th birthday anniversary. And this is how effective wording can be out of context. The media is reporting it as Trump is ordering this review in order to make sure that the exhibits align with his vision. Well, his stated vision is to make sure that there's not partisan politics sullying up what should be displays that are about America and American history. So, in other words, any American should be able to go in, regardless of political affiliation, and not feel as if they're being dogged on. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems kind of like a good vision. I like that idea. Who wants to go into a museum about your own country and walk out feeling crappy for being a citizen of your own country? This is the difference between the Trump vision and the vision of those on the left, is they believe you should be ashamed. The idea that a museum funded by taxpayers should be crafted in a way to wag its finger at the American people is not something, one, that's inviting. I mean, why would you want... Now, that doesn't mean you ignore the sins of the past. But there's a difference between nagging and finding all the negatives versus putting things into context. And Trump, whether the ultimate assessments will be in line with what other people feel is the successful filtering out any sort of unnecessary partisanship. You know, some people may feel that it's not done successfully. Others may feel it was done successfully. But I just don't think that that's a bad vision to have. And I think that media outlets are acknowledging that by leaving out the context of his vision when they talk about he wants to make sure the Smithsonian is aligned with his vision. Their portrayal of this, I've seen it described as frightening. This is just very scary and frightening to have this perspective, this suggestion that we should do away with certain artifacts or landmarks. That's part of our history, and this is the sort of thing I'm sorry, are you not the people that for years were running around tearing down statues in this country? Are you not the people that were demanding certain statues be removed from the rotunda in the U.S. Capitol? And so how about this smacking of irony? What were the statues or the monuments that the left generally had, not always, because, Lord knows the left, they were tearing down Abraham Lincoln statues and vandalizing statues of individuals that were responsible for the abolition of slavery. But anything and everything that had to do with slavery, what did they wanted it gone. They wanted it removed, including out of the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. We have to take names off of buildings. We have to delete and erase any and every sort of historical artifact connected to that moment in history. Now, what do you think Trump would happen, or what do you think they would say if Trump's like, we need to remove everything out of the Smithsonian that references slavery? Well, of course, they'd pitch a fit. So you can't get rid of that. People need to know about these things. Again, are you not the people who spent years demanding including vandalism and at times violence. Different visual displays of our history because they didn't align with your vision. It's hilarious to hear these same people wringing their hands over this dangerous and scary time in which Trump is ordering a review of what could be monuments or statues or visual representations of our history. I mean, my God, we can't get rid of those things. Well, what an amazing turnabout that is, isn't it? Well, see, it's different. In the minds of the left, well, that's different, see, because the things that we wanted removed, those were bad things. Oh, okay. As usual, in the world they live in, anything that the opposition wants to do is horrible because it's the opposition. When they do it, it's wonderful because they're good. And I think this is just another valuable opportunity for us to recognize that perspective and their reaction to the possibility that there may be some things removed out of the Smithsonian, and how just years ago the left was demanding we cleanse our entire country of such things if they didn't like them. Going to get the latest update on what has been going on in Washington, D.C. There is an interesting divide between some in the media that are based in Washington, D.C. and Democrats. And there's also, it's an opportunity for maybe newcomers to the world of this stuff to see how fake some of the outrage is. Because what is openly being discussed, and I'll have some audio from MSNBC, is that even Democrats in D.C., including lawmakers, are happy about what Trump is doing. They are happy because it's their own personal safety and the safety of their staffs, and they know it's a problem. But then they go out there and they claim it's racist. They claim that it's not necessary because the crime is just dropped to these historic lows and everything's absolutely wonderful. And what is interesting, and it isn't uncommon for there to be a sort of internal recognition of the truth versus the lie, but for the media that is run by the left to openly discuss on air the fact that Democrats are actually happy about this happening, but they're going out there and lying to people about the reasons that it shouldn't. And I mean, those people lap it up. I'm sure you've seen it as well. The cut and pasters on the left. They cut and paste. Well, the crime went down this much here and that much there, and, using numbers that were concocted by the police chief of D.C. that was put on suspension for falsifying these numbers. And they eat up the lies. So some of that audio straight ahead. Also the latest weather, update on the traffic right now, latest news.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 90. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 67. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 93. And taking a look at Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 95.
Sarah Myers.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company, it's hot. It's going to stay hot. It's miserable. And oftentimes, whenever you think, oh, it's summertime, well, we don't have a lot of storms happening right now. Everything's good with my roof. Well, the extreme heat can actually lead to what is called blistering. And that's basically whenever your shingles kind of bubble up. It typically happens around your ventilation. And that can oftentimes lead to moisture getting underneath your shingles. It can be a whole hot mess. Don't let that happen. I highly recommend my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. They do free roof inspections. They do very thorough ones at that, where they take tons of photos and videos, and then they work with you through that insurance process without making you sign anything. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out to your home, give Josh a call today. Schedule that free roof inspection. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
And I've seen the latest apparently on the beatdown in Ohio that took place is that they're saying that the guy that received the beatdown for his part, that it started, and I don't know what evidence or proof there is of this, may be fully provable, where he slapped someone and used a racial slur.
I heard this.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, so let me see if I understand this. Let's say that you get a 911 call and you show up at a home and there's a man standing there, and then his girlfriend is on the floor unconscious. She has one eye swollen shut. She has a fractured skull, maybe some broken ribs. And you say, and maybe even have proof, that she called you a name and slapped you. Oh, okay.
All good.
I guess we should handcuff her and arrest her. Like, are we serious? Now, listen, if he did slap the guy and there is some sort of standard punishment in Ohio for that sort of offense, then he should be treated like anyone else that would do the same thing. But I get this sneaking suspicion that we are supposed to believe that that means he got what he deserved. No, that's not how that works. At least to reasonable people.
Well, and if that's the case, then if he did that, why was the girl getting punched? You get what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, that's irrelevant, though. You're nitpicking at this. But
You know,
it's just amazing. And this is, there was, after that, a few days later, there was that video that went viral of those 3 black football players beating the living daylights out of a white kid at a Christian camp. And their immediate go-to, oh, well, he called us a racial slur. Now, I don't know that there was any proof or truth to that at all. But we have created this environment in which it's, and I guess this is white privilege, that if you call someone of a certain color a name, a really bad name, that means it's just fair game to beat you until you're almost dead. And it's like we're supposed to accept that. And that's the sort of atmosphere, the temperature of this thing where, well, he slapped him and called him a racial slur. So, yeah, I don't think the response was really appropriate for that. I don't think that that's a get-out-of-jail-free card. All right. Now, to Washington, D.C., where it is, if you listen to Democrats, it is a great utopia. It is wonderful. There's virtually no crime whatsoever. Watching some of this play out is interesting because there are news outlets in Washington, D.C., and those news outlets are, of course, occupied by people on the left. But they see it every day. And so seeping into their coverage of this is a little bit of the truth. Joe Scarborough on MSNBC on this particular issue of D.C. and the Democrats claiming that crime is at a historic low.
So many people have been calling me over the past couple of days going, Washington should have gotten involved years ago. This place is dangerous. It's a mess. It's a wreck and whatever. And then they'll go on Twitter, this is the worst outrage of all time, the shocking, which I understand. It's like people need to express their concerns about Donald Trump going too far. We saw what happened back in 2020 with the National Guard. Certainly can't have any repeat of that. don't want the federalization of the entire city. But, man, I don't care what the crime statistics say. Crime has been a problem in this city for the 32 years I've been living inside and outside of the city. It's just, even now, Meek and I, we're talking to somebody who lives in the city. These are all Democrats who said, our friends won't walk more than 3 blocks in D.C. at night without feeling.
He would go on elaborating, and then there was a separate a segment in which he was reading an email from a Democrat about how horrible it is and how awful the crime is, and I mean, just how sick is this? That you have these media outlets that are, again, Democratic, and they're fully acknowledging that, they won't call these people out, by the way. If Joe Scarborough if this was really a journalistic outlet, MSNBC, every time a Democrat that he knows is behind the scenes saying, yeah, this is a problem, it's a good thing Trump is taking over, and then when they go on Twitter and claim the opposite, Joe Scarborough should call that out. But instead, it's treated like, yeah, that's just politics. We're talking about people's lives. This is how indifferent the left has become to humanity. That you can have something that is as serious as rape and murder and child molestation and kidnappings and this hellhole that has been created over time in Washington, D.C., that disproportionately harms lower class and minority people, and media's like, well, but, Democrats, they have to get out there and claim that things are good because, that's politics. Is that how depraved you are? I played this audio yesterday, but just to sort of solidify and back up what it is Joe Scarborough is saying. This is a local ABC affiliate anchor in D.C. from, I believe it was Friday over the weekend.
We've been talking so much about the numbers, and usually that's how you play devil's advocate, is you talk about, stats say crime is down. However, I can tell you firsthand here in downtown D.C. where we work, right here around our bureau, just in the past 6 months, there were 2 people shot. 1 person died, literally 2 blocks down here from the bureau. It was within the last 2 years that I actually was jumped walking just 2 blocks down from here. And then just this morning, one of my coworkers said her car was stolen a block away from the bureau. So we can talk about the numbers going down, but crime is happening every single day because we're all experiencing it firsthand while working and living down here.
Clearly another Nazi. Yesterday, Janine Pirro, who is the acting attorney general of jurisdiction over, district attorney DA over D.C., and she was giving a press conference. I want to set this up a little bit here because you're going to hear her wrap up, and then you're going to hear off-camera question, and then she comes back to the mic, and she does so because of frustration, and she's giving a briefing, an update on how things are progressing. And as she's walking away, a reporter uses this left-wing propaganda again. Well, what about the stats and the fact that crime's lower than it's ever been? And so this is her wrapping up her press conference, and then her reaction to it.
Oh, stop it. We are putting all kinds of resources onto the street.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Dropping crime rates at the end of it.
It's never enough. This changed. It's never enough. You tell these families crime has dropped. You tell the mother of the intern who was shot going out from McDonald's near the Washington Convention Center, crime is down. You tell the kid who was just beat the hell and back with a severe concussion and a broken nose, crime is down. No, that falls on deaf ears. And my ears are deaf to that. And that's why I fight the fight. Thank you.
It is sick that this has to be explained. When it comes to confiscating law-abiding citizens' firearms, the left has this common refrain of, if it saves just one life. And not just firearms, regulations. Regulate this and that. If it saves just one life. Boy, isn't it amazing how quickly that has gone out the window in D.C.? All of a sudden, the part of the country that is the single most dangerous area of the country when it comes to violent crime, oh, well, it's better than it used to be. What are you whining about? I think it was yesterday or the day before, hit their 100th murder. Well, I mean, that's better than it used to be. It's only 100. Oh, we're already into August. I mean, what's 100 people? Most of them are black. So, I mean, come on. That's the Democrat attitude on this stuff. And if you're on that side, if you're offering up that perspective, you're either, I'm just going to say it, a bad person, or if you're a good person, you have really, really lost your way and you're coming dangerously close to assimilating over to the bad people side. Because good people do not dismiss human beings in this fashion. Real people do not downplay this by saying, well, there's only been 100 murders so far this year. I mean, that's better than it was this time last year. That's sick. Did you hear the police chief yesterday when she was asked about chain of command with the federal takeover? Oh, my gosh. Well, I'll tell you this. She, up until recently, the police chief was what was her position? Chief Equity Officer. Oh. If that gives you just a little foreshadowing of what you're about to hear, but first got to get a break. Traffic, I'm Nick Reed. They're going to toss her over to traffic and then play the audio yesterday press conference, and it was the D.C. police chief, and there was a press conference. The mayor was there, the chief of police was there, and the chief of police was asked what's the chain of command now and that's a good question, legitimate question, with Trump utilizing his executive authority as is granted, constitutionally speaking, when it comes to D.C. and how does that work? And the response of the chief of police, which again, foreshadowing, the chief of police was the diversity, equity, and inclusion director just a couple of years ago. So that gives you a sense of how this is going to play out.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 90. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 67. For your Thursday, sunny and hot with a high near 93. And taking a look at Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 95.
Ozarks elder law nursing homes, something that so many of us will either face in our lifetime, have a loved one that faces it, and I believe that a lot of people, understandably, have no concept of how that gets paid for. We know, gosh, I know it's really expensive, but people do it, and so it must just work out. Well, it doesn't always just work out. And in fact, planning earlier, I know this is a common thing, but it's because it's true. Earlier than later is beneficial. In Missouri, 5 different ways that nursing homes can be paid for, and much of that can be ways that are no financial burden on you or your family. As time gets closer, those options drop off to where you get to where you only have one option or you have no options. It's better to plan ahead. Consultation with Ozarks Elder Law on this costs you absolutely nothing. The consultation is a courtesy, and then you know up front what the cost will be in order to get all of that set and taken care of well ahead of time. By the way, it varies state to state, so you think, well, I've already done this when I lived in Arizona or California, but I moved to Missouri. Laws are different in every state, so if you've, and that's the same with wills and Medicaid stuff and everything. If you are from another state, you still need to have any and all of that stuff checked out. But when it comes to all that stuff, but specifically nursing homes as well, 10 area locations: Mountain Grove, Bolivar, Branson, just a few of the locations that you can walk in and talk with the people at Ozarks Elder Law. The other locations you can find at ozarkselderlaw.com and also at Nick's Endorsements, KSGF.com. The mayor and the chief of police, they have been well, I don't know that you could say they're positive. They've been accommodating to Donald Trump and this temporary federalization of law enforcement in D.C. The police union has been very vocal that this is necessary. They're very supportive of it. There was a press conference yesterday, and the press conference was held by a couple of different individuals. You had the police chief, Pamela Smith. You had the mayor there. And the police chief, who previously served as the chief equity officer, so this is the DEI stuff, is now the chief of police in Washington, D.C. The most dangerous city in America. Now, of course, sometimes St. Louis, and it depends. The problem is statistics get tinkered around, and violent assaults that don't use a weapon don't count as a violent assault statistic in Washington, D.C. So, a lot of these times, who's actually first, second, third, up for debate, but it's not a safe place. And so in their brilliant decision-making, they make the chief of police a person that just recently was the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. Yesterday, during a press conference, what you're going to hear here is the chief of police ask what the chain of command is. And you will hear her very brief 2 or 3 word answer, at which point, and visually you see the mayor physically step in between her and the microphone and take over the answer because of the answer from the police chief. And here's that exchange.
What does that mean? Well, is it Pam Bondi speaking to the mayor? How does this work? So at the executive order.
All right. So could you hear it? I know it went quickly. Ask what's the chain of command. And the police chief said, well, what do you mean? Did not know what chain of command meant. And so he had to sort of articulate, explain, and then you hear the mayor say, let me, and just physically moves in to answer the question. I suppose it's not unreasonable to recognize there may be some people out there that don't really necessarily understand what chain of command is or means, but ultimately it's a hierarchy of authority. So anytime, whatever your position is, if you have a question or you need permission to do something, who is the person you go to? They are your direct, supervisor. So that's the chain of command. And then who do they go to? And who does that person go to? And so chain of command is very important for stability purposes, particularly when it comes to military, law enforcement. When you're talking about safety issues, chain of command is very important. This is Chief of Police did not know what that meant. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does chain of command mean? I have argued that one of the victims of this insane DEI stuff are the people who get put into these positions. Now, I know she could have turned this position down as chief of police, but is it really even fair to take someone like who doesn't even know what they don't know and put, what a humiliating position to be put in? We've seen this increasingly. We saw this when it came to the fires out in Los Angeles, the Palisades, and I don't even remember what the particular issue or press conference was, but it was a DEI hire situation, and it was just embarrassing, on full display, total and complete embarrassment. And that is part of what this DEI stuff does, in which they take people who are in no way, shape, or form equipped or qualified to be in a position of authority, and then when they really do need to answer some of these serious questions with real-life implications, they look like complete and total morons. And they get mocked mercilessly on social media and in regular media. They get talked about. I mean, there's numerous news stories out there about this chief of police getting reamed for not even knowing what chain of command is. Now, of course, the mainstream media is going to cover for her, and if they do cover it, then it'll be done in as mild of a way as possible. But that's unfair to, it's unfair to put these people in these positions. And guess who else it's unfair to? It's unfair to every woman and every minority out there who actually deserves to be in a position of authority, because what happens when you consistently see DEI hires, people that are categorized as DEI hires, and then they are put in positions in which they end up demonstrating they clearly are not qualified for, that naturally makes people believe that when they look at another person from that category, be it a woman or a person of color, it makes them suspicious. It gives them doubt. And that doubt isn't racist, and it's not, homophobic or misogynistic. It is an acknowledgement that the people in charge, who may be white people, white men, are deliberately putting people in positions that they have no reason to be in, and they are not qualified for. That's who creates this environment, and it isn't fair to people. It isn't fair to the qualified people. It isn't fair to the unqualified people. The only people who, quote, benefit are the lefties, which usually, again, are white lefties, oftentimes men, who get to pat themselves on the back and talk about how open-minded they are and how equitable they are and how superior they are. Meanwhile, everyone else suffers, and you end up with, in one of the most dangerous cities of the United States of America, at a press conference, the chief of police being asked about chain of command, and she doesn't even know what that means. Going to take a quick break. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. All of your home loan needs, I want a great homeloan.com. Keep that in mind. Refinancing, is it a good time? Of course not. I got a 3% interest rate. I'm going to wait for those rates to come down, especially with the incredibly fantastic inflation news, better than expected. Surely the Fed's going to. That doesn't necessarily translate to lower home interest rates. Even if it does, that doesn't necessarily mean that waiting is the best thing to do. There are so many variables involved, and that's where the characters and their team come in, get started. I want a great homeloan.com. Don't wait. And listen, that doesn't mean that if you reach out to them because you've been waiting for the right moment, that they are going to tell you, oh, yes, now is the exact right moment. You need to do it now. That it's not about selling you on that idea. It's about finding out what your particular situation is and then letting you know all of the different ramifications and the possibilities of you doing the refinancing now or the home loan now. I want a great homeloan.com because you do. This text, and this is a text that covers what we're talking about now and just an hour ago about NPR and PBS and how they hilariously still claim that they are non-biased as a news source. The text message reading, I just flipped over to NPR during the break, as I do once in a while. They teased their upcoming story when something like this, as Trump tries to take over law enforcement in Washington, D.C., we talked to an officer who worked the Capitol when it was attacked by a mob on January 6th. They just can't help themselves. Cannot help themselves. Now check out this story. This is, to me, a perfect side-by-side comparison of a normal person and a left-wing lunatic. It's about Trump taking over Washington, D.C. And so it, sets up D.C. residents preparing for the federal takeover and so forth. And so they go and, they talk to a few people, a few residents of D.C. Oh, what do you think about this? Now, keep in mind, 90.3% of the city, D.C. residents, voted for Kamala Harris. 6.5% voted for Donald Trump. And then the rest voted for whomever else. Only 6.5%. That is insane. So the first person so anyway, point being is overwhelmingly these are anti-Trump people, okay? They, this is the Washington Examiner, found a gal by the name of Melanie Splendora. And by the picture, she looks like she's 75, maybe 80 years old. And so she's asked, what do you think about Trump taking over? And here's what she said, quote, I feel safer. It's terrible here. Now, Splendora lives on Thomas Circle, just 2 blocks from a scene of a fatal shooting that took place just this past Monday. She added that she's witnessed groups of teenagers just stealing from a nearby CVS more than once. Quote, security doesn't do anything because they're in a big group. And then they go cursing and being rude to the people in the stores. They think they can do whatever they want because they feel like they're in control of the situation and they just run off. No one is going to say anything. The Washington Examiner notes that Splendora no longer even goes out at night in Washington, D.C. because of fear. And cited comments from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser acknowledging that more law enforcement presence in local neighborhoods may be positive in fighting crime. All right, so here's Washington, D.C., got a woman. She's like, this is scary. I'm glad Trump is doing this. I don't even go out. My town, this is where I live. I can't even go out. I'm imprisoned in my home, and I just walking my dog, going to the store, it's dangerous. Okay, so that's one perspective. They talked to another D.C. local, Axel Campo, who is opposed to Trump taking over. And this is his rationale. Quote, I'm a non-binary person that is a D.C. resident. I also have a last name that's not traditionally white, so if I get stopped in the wrong area, I could get sent off to a concentration camp or to another country or disappeared. This is a complete fascist overreach. I don't know when the Gestapo are going to pop up. Now you tell me which is a rational perspective. And how the left has managed to take human beings and make them so irrational and paranoid delusional. Here you have on one hand a woman who's like, nah, this is just a normal woman. She's like, it's dangerous. I go to CVS, mobs, they come in, they steal. Nobody can stop them. They know they can do whatever they want to. I can't go out at night. There was a murder just Monday, just 2 blocks from my home. And then you have another guy who's opposed to Trump coming in to make D.C. safer because he believes, as a non-binary, the Gestapo is going to round him up and put him in a concentration camp. That is paranoid delusion. You cannot get, it's just, as I read that story and those two different perspectives, and it really signaled to me why it is that Democrats are losing the country, because you look at their support, their focus, what their base and their active voters believe versus just normal people. And she, in all likelihood, is a Democrat, the woman who's like, yeah, no, this is a good thing. This needs to happen. Because as Joe Scarborough noted, and so many others have noted, and by the way, I've been told this by people who work in Washington, D.C., that everyone knows, even Democrats are happy that this is going to happen, but they have to go out and lie and continue to try to convince their supporters that Washington, D.C. is actually safe, which is a sick thing. But that's what they do. You still have some of the insanity on the left claiming that Trump's attempt to make Washington, D.C. a safer place for what is a disproportionately high number of people of color, that makes him racist, as opposed to people who are perfectly fine allowing those people to be victims of murder, victims of rape, victims of assault, victims of carjacking. Those are the people who care about people of color. You want to talk about creating and crafting an upside-down, sick, twisted world. There is something off about Trump in a way that is beneficial to the residents and visitors of Washington, D.C., because most sane people would say, first off, would never even bother. That's why Obama didn't bother with trying to fix this problem. Biden, Congress, as Joe Scarborough noted, even Democrat members of Congress are like, yeah, we should have done something about this a long time ago. Everyone, not a single person willing to take this on but Trump. And for what? He could easily, just like everyone else, be like, let them kill each other. I think that a lot of us are not recognizing what a hellhole the left is turning Colorado into, but this story is just one of many examples. A registered sex offender accused of attempting to kidnap a child from a playground will face no prosecution after a judge dismissed the case due to a finding of permanent incompetence. Now, the instinct is to be upset with the judge, but the judge has no choice in this matter because Democrats passed a law a few years ago saying that if somebody has been deemed not repairable, there's a certain term, but essentially that they aren't mentally competent enough to know that the difference between right and wrong, and they can't be fixed. The law says that you cannot arrest them for crimes. You can't. So if you get yourself deemed insane and non-fixable, then you don't have to worry about going to jail at all. This guy, he's a transgender, repeat sex offender, and has his sister, even his own defense attorney is like, yeah, this is jacked up. But because he falls under this category in the law that Democrats play, he's just back there. There's nothing that can be done about it. Nothing. That's Colorado. What a wonderful law. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.